the most evil black serial killers in U.S. Shocking crimes you've never heard of. Welcome back to Justice Reversed, where real crimes meet real justice. Number 1. Mark Gudo. Some predators walk in the shadows. Others move through crowded streets, invisible until the damage is done. In Phoenix, Arizona, one man's violence turned ordinary days into moments of terror. Mark Gudo, born September 6, 1964, lived just miles from Baseline Road. Between August 2005 and June 2006, police say he carried out a series of murders, sexual assaults, armed robberies, and kidnappings that would earn him the name Baseline Killer. His victims were strangers, men and women going about daily routines, washing a car, waiting for a bus, walking home. The spree began with assaults and robberies, escalating to murder. On September 8, 2005, 19-year-old Georgia Thompson was found shot in the head. 3 months later, 39-year-old Tina Washington met the same fate. By February 2006, snack truck workers Romelia Vargas and Myrna Palma-Roman were killed in their vehicle. In March, 2 more, Liliana Sanchez Cabrera and Chow Cho, were found executed. The list grew with Kristen Nicole Gibbons, Sophia Nunez, and finally Carmen Miranda, abducted from a car wash on June 29, 2006, and found nearby, shot in the head. Witnesses described a man in disguises, wigs, glasses, even a Halloween mask. He moved fast, controlled his victims at gunpoint, and left few traces. One attack on 2 sisters, one visibly pregnant, yielded critical DNA evidence linking Gudo to multiple crimes. Fear gripped Phoenix. Women enrolled in self-defense classes, bought firearms, and avoided going out alone. Police held community meetings, distributed sketches, and plastered billboards with reward offers. The hunt ended on September 4, 2006, when Gudo was arrested for the assault on the sisters. By December, police publicly tied him to the Baseline Killer murders. In court, prosecutors called him a predator with a desire for power, arguing he controlled not only his victims but the entire crime scene. Gudo's wife insisted he was innocent, citing partial DNA matches and other potential suspects. But the jury saw otherwise. On October 31, 2011, he was convicted of 9 murders and dozens of other felony counts. On November 30, 2011, in Maricopa County Superior Court, Gudo wore a beige prison uniform, hands shackled, his face expressionless as he heard the sentence. 9 death penalties and over 1,700 years for his other crimes. The judge and jurors alike called the killings especially cruel. Phoenix Police Chief Jack Harris later said he terrorized parts of this city for months. The community still remembers that year as one of fear and vigilance. The tragedy leaves more than grief, it leaves hard-earned lessons. First, remain alert in public spaces, especially during routine tasks where vigilance drops. Second, trust your instincts. An uneasy feeling is reason enough to leave. Third, share your movements with someone you trust. A simple check-in can save a life. Evil doesn't always lurk in darkness. Sometimes it stands in daylight, hidden in plain sight, waiting for the moment no one is watching. Number 2. Chester Turner. In certain corners of Los Angeles, the hum of traffic and neon lights once concealed a far darker reality. For over a decade, one man preyed on the city's most vulnerable, leaving a trail of lives erased without warning. Chester Dwayne Turner, born November 5, 1966, seemed unremarkable to passers-by. Behind that anonymity, police would later discover, was one of the most prolific serial killers in Los Angeles history. From 1987 to 1998, Turner targeted primarily homeless women and sex workers, luring them into secluded spaces. Many were found partially clothed, sexually assaulted, and strangled, sometimes with his bare hands, other times with improvised ligatures. The violence began in March 1987, when 21-year-old Diane Johnson was discovered in an alley. Within months, Alandra Joyce Bunn and Annette Ernest were found under similar circumstances. In September 1989, Regina Nadine Washington, 6 months pregnant, was murdered, her unborn child also counted among the dead. The killings continued into the 1990s. Deborah Williams, Mary Edwards, Andrea Triplett, Desiree Jones. Turner's victims often vanished from streets he knew well. Police at the time were investigating multiple overlapping murder series under the media's Southside Slayer label, and for years, he blended into that chaos. In 1995, another man, David Allen Jones, was wrongly convicted of 2 of Turner's murders, serving 11 years before DNA evidence exonerated him. By the late 1990s, Turner's methods had grown bolder. In February 1998, Paula Donnell Vance's murder was partially captured on security footage, a shadowy outline moving with chilling intent. Weeks later, Brenda Breeze was found dead just steps from where Turner was living. That September, in Salt Lake City, Utah, 29-year-old Idisha Camp was killed in a case that would remain unsolved for decades. The break came not from a crime scene, but from prison policy. In 2002, Turner was convicted of raping a woman he knew from a homeless shelter. His mandatory DNA submission to California's Cody's database set off a cascade of matches, first to Vance and Breeze, then to 10 more unsolved murders. By December 2004, he faced 10 murder charges. In May 2007, a Los Angeles jury found him guilty of 11 murders, including the unborn child of Regina Washington. He received the death penalty. Wearing a tan jail uniform, Turner appeared detached, at times smirking, as victims' families spoke. A second trial in 2014 added 4 more murder convictions and another death sentence. In 2024, Utah prosecutors charged him with Idisha Camp's murder, closing a 26-year-old cold case. For families, the convictions brought relief mixed with enduring loss. "This is the happiest day in a long time," said Robert Williams, brother of Mildred Beasley, "but it doesn't bring her back. From their pain emerge vital lessons. Verify the identity and intent of anyone you allow into private spaces. Share your whereabouts with someone you trust. Act quickly on instincts. Distance can save your life. Predators thrive in shadows made by neglect and disbelief. The greatest defense begins with seeing danger before it chooses you." Number 3, Lonnie David Franklin Jr. In some neighborhoods, time seems to move slower, streets carrying the weight of forgotten stories. In South Los Angeles, those streets hid a predator for decades. Lonnie David Franklin Jr., born August 30, 1952, lived quietly among the community he would terrorize. Between 1985 and 2007, police say he murdered at least 10 young black women and attempted to kill another. Most were vulnerable, struggling with addiction or engaged in sex work. He targeted strangers, luring them into his car, then shooting or strangling them before dumping their bodies in alleys, dumpsters, or under debris. His first confirmed murder, Deborah Jackson, came in April 1985. Over the next 3 years, the killings continued. Henrietta Wright, Barbara Ware, Bernita Sparks, Mary Lowe, and others, most shot at close range with a .25 caliber pistol. In November 1988, one woman, Anitra Washington, survived. Shot in the chest and sexually assaulted, she was pushed from a car and left to die. Her testimony decades later would be crucial. Then, the murders appeared to stop. This so-called 14-year sleep earned him the nickname Grim Sleeper. Prosecutors believe he never stopped killing, just avoided detection. The violence resumed in 2002 with the murder of 15-year-old Princess Bertha Muir, followed by Valerie McCorvey in 2003 and Janicia Peters in 2007. Cold case detectives revisiting unsolved homicides found matching DNA linking the 2000s murders to those from the 1980s. The killer's profile wasn't in the database until a familial DNA hit emerged from his son's 2009 arrest. Detectives tracked Franklin to a pizza restaurant, where an undercover officer collected a slice and utensils he discarded. DNA from those items matched evidence from multiple victims. Franklin was arrested on July 7, 2010. In court, prosecutors described him as a predator who derived pleasure from killing and degrading women. They presented over 500 photographs found in his home, many of women whose identities remain unknown. His defense argued the evidence was circumstantial, but the jury saw a calculated pattern. On May 5, 2016, after nearly 3 months of testimony, he was convicted of 10 murders and 1 attempted murder. The jury recommended death. On August 10, 2016, Franklin sat in a Los Angeles courtroom in an orange jumpsuit, eyes forward, expression unreadable, as the judge pronounced the sentence. Community activists called his arrest overdue, criticizing law enforcement's slow response and lack of early public warnings. If they had done their due diligence, some victims would still be alive, said Samara Herard, sister of one victim. From these tragedies come sobering reminders. First, verify identities and meet new acquaintances only in public, well-lit places. Second, tell someone your location and expected return time. Third, if instincts warn you, leave immediately. Safety comes before courtesy. Monsters don't always hide in darkness. Sometimes they smile from across the street, waiting for a moment when no one is looking. The true danger is not just in their presence, it's in the comfort we feel when we believe they are far away. Vigilance is a habit, not a reaction. And it is often the one habit that can keep us alive. Number 4. Paul Duraso. Beneath the calm rhythm of Jacksonville's streets, a predator moved with calculated ease, leaving no sign of the terror that trailed behind him. His name was Paul Duraso, and for 6 years, his pattern of violence reached from Georgia to Florida. Born August 11, 1970, Duraso cultivated a facade of normalcy, a husband, a father, a taxi driver. Behind closed doors, his charm gave way to brutality. Investigators say he sought out young, single African-American women, often living alone. He gained their trust just long enough to step inside, then bound their hands, raped them, and strangled them with cords tied into a distinctive slipknot. The first confirmed killing was in 1997. 26-year-old Tracy Habersham was found near Fort Benning, Georgia, raped and strangled. It wouldn't be connected to Duraso until years later. By 1999, 24-year-old Tyresa Mack was dead in her Jacksonville apartment. He would later claim they'd had a relationship, but DNA told another story. Then, the pace of killing surged. In December 2002, Nicole Williams, just 18, was found wrapped in a blue blanket and dumped in a ditch. 2 weeks later, police discovered the body of 19-year-old Nakia Kilpatrick, 6 months pregnant, in her apartment. Her 2 young sons were found alive but severely malnourished, left alone for days beside their mother's decomposing body. Only 9 days later, on his first day as a Gator City taxi driver, Duraso raped and killed 20-year-old Shawanda McAllister, also pregnant. By January's end, 2 more, 17-year-old Giovanna Jefferson and 19-year-old Syreeta Cohen, vanished. Their bodies were found together in a ditch on February 5, 2003. Both had been strangled. The investigation broke open when DNA from several crime scenes matched a sample Duraso had given during a prior rape conviction. Phone logs, cab records, and witnesses placed him with victims just before they disappeared. On February 6, 2003, police arrested him on unrelated charges. Within months, he was facing multiple murder counts. Prosecutors chose to try him first for the murder of Tyresa Mack, where the DNA evidence was overwhelming. In June 2007, the jury returned a guilty verdict for first-degree murder. At sentencing, Judge Jack Schemer called it a consciously hideous crime, noting the calculated cruelty. Duraso, in a tan prison uniform, stared ahead without reaction as he was sentenced to death. But that sentence would not stand. In 2017, Florida's death penalty law changed to require unanimous jury recommendations. His case was sent back for resentencing. In 2021, a new jury voted 10-2 for death, short of unanimity. He was resentenced to life in prison. For victims' families, the legal twists brought mixed emotions. "It won't bring my sister back, but I do have closure," said Latashia Bell, sister of Tyresa Mack. From years of pain and hard lessons, 3 warnings remain, simple steps that, if followed, may keep another life from being stolen. First, never allow strangers or casual acquaintances into your home without thorough verification. Second, always inform someone you trust about your location and expected return time. Third, if something feels wrong, even slightly, leave immediately. Safety is worth more than politeness. Sometimes, danger doesn't force its way in. It's invited and only recognized when it's far too late. Number 5. Darren Dion Van. It began in places most people ignore: vacant rooms, crumbling walls, streets where names fade faster than faces. In Gary, Indiana, those forgotten spaces became silent witnesses to a serial killer's trail. Darren Dion Van, born March 21, 1971, was 43 when police finally stopped him in October 2014. A registered sex offender from Texas, he had served time for sexual assault and carried a history of violence. Authorities say he targeted women involved in prostitution or drug use, believing they were less likely to be reported missing. His known spree began with 19-year-old Africa Hardy. On October 17, 2014, she met Van at a Hammond Motel 6 after he contacted her through Backpage.com. Hours later, she was found strangled in a bathtub. When detectives questioned Van the next day, he surprised them, not only confessing to Hardy's murder but leading police to 6 other bodies hidden in abandoned Gary homes. The remains belonged to Annette Jones, Tierra Beatty, Christine Williams, Tracy Martin, Sonia Billingsley, and Tanya Gatlin. Most had been missing for months, some were skeletonized when found. All had been strangled. Investigators discovered Van's method was chillingly consistent. He used abandoned properties, of which Gary had nearly 10,000, as dumping grounds. He claimed his killings were fueled by rages and triggers from the past, sometimes admitting he didn't need a reason at all. In court, prosecutors described the crimes as premeditated and predatory. Family members of the victims filled the room during hearings, some wiping away tears, others staring at Van in silence. Lori Townsend, Africa Hardy's mother, told reporters the victims were somebody important, not nobodies. Marvin Clinton, longtime partner of Tierra Beatty, said, "I want him to suffer. These women will haunt him for the rest of his life." Van initially faced the death penalty, but on May 4, 2018, he pleaded guilty to 7 murders in exchange for life without parole. On May 25th, Lake County Judge Samuel Kapas sentenced him to 7 concurrent life terms. Wearing a jail-issued uniform, Van showed no emotion as the sentence was read. The case reignited discussions about Gary's abandoned buildings and their role in enabling crime. Mayor Karen Freeman Wilson acknowledged he preyed on individuals who might have been less likely to be reported missing, pledging to accelerate efforts to demolish unsafe structures. Beyond the grief, this case offers enduring lessons. It's not just about catching a killer, it's about preventing the next one. First, always let someone know your location and who you're meeting, especially when plans involve unfamiliar people or places. Second, treat abandoned or isolated areas as high-risk zones and avoid them when possible. Third, report suspicious activity early. One tip can break a pattern. Awareness isn't paranoia, it's prevention. Evil doesn't always hide in darkness. Sometimes, it moves in plain sight, exploiting what society chooses to ignore until it's too late. Number 6. Derek Todd Lee. Some crimes leave a mark so deep, they change how a city sleeps at night. In Baton Rouge, Louisiana, a hidden predator stalked for over a decade before the truth emerged. Derek Todd Lee, born November 5, 1968, lived a life of contradictions. Outwardly, he was a quiet neighbor, sometimes charming, sometimes withdrawn. But beneath that mask, investigators say, was the Baton Rouge serial killer, a man connected to at least 7 murders between 1992 and 2003. His victims were mostly professional or working-class women, targeted in their own homes. Lee's approach was calculated. He often talked his way inside, leaving no signs of forced entry. Once in, the attacks were brutal, sexual assaults followed by stabbing, strangulation, or bludgeoning. In August 1992, 41-year-old Connie Warner was found bludgeoned days after disappearing. In 1998, 28-year-old Randy Mabrewer vanished. Her body was never found. By 2001, the killings escalated. Gina Wilson Green, 41, was strangled in her home. 4 months later, 21-year-old Geraldine DeSoto was stabbed repeatedly in Addis. May 2002 brought one of the most violent scenes in Louisiana's history. Charlotte Murray Pace, 22, was stabbed over 80 times and bludgeoned with an iron. Her friend and Pace later recalled, "We thought she was safe in her own home. She wasn't." Weeks later, Diane Alexander survived an attempted murder, providing police with a description that would prove pivotal. Pamela Kinnamore, 44, was abducted in July and found days later, raped, beaten, and her throat slashed. In November, Trinisha Collum, 23, was found beaten to death. The final known victim, Carrie Yoder, 26, disappeared in March 2003 and was later found in Whiskey Bay. 4 months, the investigation floundered. Eyewitness accounts and an early FBI profile incorrectly pointed to a white male suspect. Thousands of DNA samples from white men yielded nothing. Fear gripped the city. Women armed themselves, took self-defense classes, and stayed indoors after dark. The break came when new DNA analysis revealed the killer was of predominantly African ancestry. Zachary police recognized the sketch from a prior Peeping Tom case, Derek Todd Lee. A DNA swab taken from Lee matched multiple crime scenes. On May 27, 2003, he was arrested in Atlanta after a nationwide manhunt. Prosecutors tried him first for DeSoto's murder, winning a life sentence in August 2004. In October, he was convicted of first-degree murder in the Pace case and sentenced to death. In court, Lee, wearing a tan prison uniform, showed no emotion as jurors unanimously voted for execution. Lee's death in prison from heart disease in 2016 closed the case without an execution. And Pace described it as a tidal wave of memory, but also a release. He no longer has a seat at our table. From years of pain, 3 warnings stand clear. Verify anyone you allow into your home. Always inform someone of your location and return time. Act on instincts. Leave if anything feels wrong. Evil can wear a friendly face, but it survives only when trust is misplaced and vigilance is lost. Number 7. Khalil Wheeler Weaver. Over less than 3 months in 2016, 4 females disappeared from communities around Newark, New Jersey. Each had arranged to meet someone online. None returned alive except one, who lived to identify the killer. Khalil Wheeler Weaver, born April 20, 1996, was only 20 when he began what prosecutors called a calculated hunting pattern. Using dating apps like Tagged, he targeted women for sex work, confident that no one would miss them. His approach was meticulous: gloves, condoms, careful planning, leaving as little trace as possible. His first confirmed victim, 19-year-old Robin West, entered his car on August 31, 2016. Hours later, she was dead. Her body was abandoned in a vacant house and the building set ablaze. Investigators would not identify her for 2 weeks. On October 7th, 15-year-old Mawa Dumbia vanished from her Newark home. Prosecutors say Wheeler Weaver strangled her and hid her remains in another abandoned building in Orange, where they stayed undiscovered until May 2019. Weeks later, 33-year-old Joanne Brown was lured, strangled, and dumped in the same town. Her body went unnoticed for 6 weeks. Then came Sarah Butler, a 20-year-old college student, missing just before Thanksgiving. Her friends, alarmed, hacked her social media, set up a fake profile, and baited Wheeler Weaver into a meeting, where police arrested him. Sarah's body was found in Eagle Rock Reservation, strangled with clothing. While police worked to confirm Butler's killer, another woman would come face to face with the same predator and survive to tell the story. Tiffany Taylor, 34, testified that Wheeler Weaver handcuffed her, gagged her with duct tape, raped her, and tried to strangle her. Pretending to comply, she persuaded him to return her to a motel, where she escaped and called 911. "I'm always paranoid now," she told the court, "but I'm happy to still be here." Evidence mounted quickly. Cell tower data traced his movements to each murder scene. Surveillance placed him with multiple victims. His phone contained searches like homemade poison to kill humans. The similarities in method, strangulation, body disposal, and abandoned sites were unmistakable. In 2019, a jury convicted Wheeler Weaver on 3 counts of murder, attempted murder, aggravated sexual assault, arson, kidnapping, and desecrating human remains. On October 7, 2021, Superior Court Judge Mark S. Ali sentenced him to 160 years, with parole possible only after 140. Dressed in a beige prison jumpsuit, he sat still, eyes fixed forward, as victims' families spoke. Sarah Butler's father told him, "I hope you suffer every night." Anita Mason, Robin West's mother, reminded everyone she had a whole life before her demise. Wheeler Weaver now remains in New Jersey State Prison, facing another murder charge for Mawa Dumbia. This case is more than a headline, it's a caution etched in lives lost. First, confirm identities and meet strangers only in secure, public places. Second, share your location with someone you trust before any meeting. Third, trust your instincts. Unease is enough to walk away. Awareness today can prevent tragedy tomorrow. Predators don't always lurk in the shadows. Sometimes, they hide in a profile picture, waiting for the next person to swipe right. Number 8. Keith Gibson. In less than 6 months, 8 people were shot, 6 of them killed. The same revolver. The same man. And no one stopped him until it was far too late. Keith Gibson, born in 1982, was no stranger to violence. At age 26, he shot and killed a man during a robbery and was sentenced to 20 years. In 2020, after serving 12, he was granted parole. Within months, he began killing again. This time, with a level of ruthlessness that shocked even seasoned investigators. In early 2021, he returned to Philadelphia. Within days, violence followed. On January 28, he entered Al Medina Traders in Germantown and shot 2 customers, Eric Flores and Roy Caban, execution style. On February 8, he did the unthinkable. He shot and killed his 54-year-old mother, Christine Gibson, at her workplace. When police questioned him, he denied involvement. Days later, he violated parole and was briefly jailed, then released again. What happened next was a calculated escalation. On May 15th, he entered a Metro by T-Mobile store in Ellesmere, Delaware, and fatally shot clerk Leslie Ruiz Basilio, 28. Her SUV was later found near Gibson's home. 3 weeks later, on June 5th, Gibson entered a Dunkin' in North Philadelphia. Security footage captured him forcing manager Christine Lugo to open the store. He then shot her in the head at point-blank range and fled. The next day, he robbed a Rite Aid in Wilmington. This time, the clerk, Belal Al-Mansouri, was shot in the head but survived by pretending to be dead. That move saved his life. "He shot me again after I hit the floor," Al-Mansouri later said. He didn't hesitate. A GPS tracker placed in the stolen cash led police to Gibson. At the time of his arrest on June 8, he had a loaded revolver, a ballistic vest, and several stolen items. The gun matched bullets from 5 separate crime scenes. Surveillance footage, eyewitness accounts, and phone data cemented the case. In November 2023, a Delaware jury found Gibson guilty on all charges: 2 murders, attempted murder, armed robbery, and weapons violations. He received 7 life sentences without parole, plus 296 years. Judge Sheldon Rennie called it an unprecedented display of disregard for human life. Relatives of the victims sat through days of graphic testimony. Some wept quietly. Others stared at Gibson in silence. The case exposed fatal flaws in parole enforcement. Gibson had violated release conditions multiple times, yet was never flagged as high risk. He moved between states with no effective monitoring. Cases like this force us to re-examine public safety. First, never underestimate parolees with violent histories. Second, employers should ensure 2-person protocols during opening or closing shifts. Third, always report suspicious behavior at storefronts. Early action saves lives. Keith Gibson is currently imprisoned in Delaware, awaiting trial for 4 additional murders in Pennsylvania. But for the families who lost loved ones, no sentence will bring them back. Sometimes, the most dangerous person isn't a stranger in the dark. It's someone already known to the system, released, unmonitored, and ready to kill again. Number 9. Anthony Robinson. She thought she was meeting someone from a dating app. Instead, she vanished. And police would soon uncover a horrifying pattern, one that began with charm and ended in a shopping cart. Anthony Eugene Robinson, later known nationwide as the shopping cart killer, was 35 years old when police uncovered his crimes in November 2021. By the time he stood trial in 2025, he had been connected to at least 6 women across Virginia, D.C., and Maryland, most of whom he met through dating apps. The common thread? Each body was dumped using a shopping cart. His earliest confirmed victim was Aline Redmond, 54, who went missing in October 2021. Surveillance videos showed her entering a motel room with Robinson. She never came out. Days later, Robinson was seen wheeling a shopping cart with what appeared to be a body wrapped in sheets. The same pattern followed with 39-year-old Tanita Smith. Then came Cheyenne Brown, a 29-year-old pregnant mother, and Stephanie Harrison, 48, a tourist staying in the same motel. Their remains were found in a plastic bin, exposed in a vacant lot. Prosecutors argued Robinson lured his victims for sex, then strangled them for pleasure. His phone held thousands of explicit videos resembling the victims. A jailhouse informant testified that Robinson described killing as a rush and referred to victims' bodies as no different than sex dolls. Victims were often found nude except for socks, with their shirts pulled up to expose their chests, details prosecutors used to build the image of a sadistic killer who left his signature behind. Robinson's trial focused on 2 murders, Redmond and Smith. Despite his defense arguing the evidence was circumstantial, the jury took only 30 minutes to return a guilty verdict on all 6 charges, including 2 counts of first-degree murder and 2 counts of aggravated murder. During sentencing, Robinson sat still, head low, expressionless. In court, emotions exploded. Dean Smith, Tanita's brother, cursed Robinson and was jailed for contempt. "I will not rest until he pays," said Cheyenne Brown's mother. Prosecutor Marcia Garst described Robinson as a predator who kills women for sport, calling him a spider who lured and killed again and again. The case sparked national concern about dating apps, transient predators, and police coordination across state lines. The shopping cart killer had moved through multiple jurisdictions, unnoticed until patterns and surveillance tied it all together. This case leaves more than grief, it delivers critical warnings. First, avoid meeting online matches in private or unfamiliar spaces. Second, never dismiss uneasy feelings during any encounter. Third, if someone crosses a boundary, report it, sooner is safer. In today's world, vigilance isn't just smart, it's survival. And one alert decision could save a life, maybe even your own. Anthony Robinson awaits sentencing this September. But for the victims' families, the damage is permanent. They lost daughters, sisters, mothers. Sometimes evil doesn't wear a mask. Sometimes it smiles through a dating profile and wheels its victims away in a shopping cart. Number 10, Wesley Brownley. A quiet California city. Random killings with no warning, no motive. And a masked man silently stalking the streets. What police uncovered would expose one of the state's most chilling manhunts. Wesley Brownley was 43 years old when police arrested him in October 2022 in Stockton, California. He wasn't caught at the scene of a crime. He was intercepted while prowling the streets at 2 a.m., wearing dark clothing and armed, allegedly searching for his next victim. According to police, he was out hunting. The murders had begun 18 months earlier. On April 10, 2021, Juan Vasquez Serrano, 39, was fatally shot in Oakland. Just 6 days later, Natasha Latour was shot in Stockton, but she survived. Authorities wouldn't realize until much later that this was the beginning of a serial killing spree. Between July and September 2022, 5 more men were killed in ambush-style shootings: Paul Yaw, Salvador Debuty Jr., Jonathan Rodriguez Hernandez, Juan Cruz, and Lawrence Lopez Sr. None of them appeared to be connected. Some were homeless, others not. Most were alone, gunned down in near total darkness. There was no robbery, no warning, and in Latour's case, not even a word from the shooter. At first, investigators struggled to connect the dots. The killings seemed random, but ballistic evidence eventually linked several of the shootings. Public tips and cell phone data helped pinpoint Brownley's pattern, often driving, stopping at parks or alleyways, and then disappearing again. The final breakthrough came when surveillance caught him circling potential hunting grounds. "We are sure we stopped another killing," said Stockton Police Chief Stanley McFadden. Brownley's criminal past dated back to his teenage years, with multiple drug-related convictions in Alameda County. But nothing hinted at the level of violence he now stood accused of. As of late 2022, Brownley had been charged with 7 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of attempted murder. Prosecutors added special circumstance allegations, opening the door for life without parole or even the death penalty, though California currently has a moratorium on executions. Community fear was palpable. The city of Stockton was gripped by anxiety during the months of the killings. "There are some people who are just simply too dangerous to share the streets with you and I," said San Joaquin County District Attorney Tori Verber Salazar. Relatives of the victims, especially Lawrence Lopez's family, expressed heartbreak but also restraint. "Only God can judge him," said his brother. "Whatever happens to him, it will never equal what he did." The story leaves more than fear, it delivers warnings worth remembering. First, never underestimate the danger of isolated areas, even in your own city. Second, if someone's behavior triggers your instincts, don't ignore the signal. Third, a single tip to the police can save lives. In crimes like these, awareness isn't paranoia, it's survival. Even with a suspect in custody, questions remain unanswered. What drove Wesley Brownley? Why these victims? And how many more might there have been? Sometimes, the scariest thing isn't what we know, it's what we'll never understand. They walked our streets, blended into our neighborhoods, and struck when no one was looking. These are not just stories of evil, They're reminders that danger doesn't always come from the shadows. Which of these cases chilled you the most? And how many others are still out there, walking free? If you want more true crime stories that dig beneath the headlines and expose the darkest corners of human nature, make sure you subscribe to Justice Reversed and hit the bell icon. That way, you'll be the first to know when our next deep dive drops, because the most shocking crimes are often the ones you've never heard of.